Picture this. 1943. An elite Wehrmacht Panzer division is on the attack. The Tigers, which have made all of Europe tremble, are confident of victory. But suddenly, something happens that makes the German aces scream in terror over the radio. Their tanks aren't exploding. They are vanishing. Without a single shot fired, without a single mine. The steel monsters simply drown in the middle of the dry, solid steppe, burying their crews alive. What diabolical weapon did the Russians use? At what cost did 36 men on a suicide mission with shovels create this engineering miracle that makes the blood run cold? And why was this brutal experiment forgotten? Watch until the end. The truth about how physics can be scarier than any shell will shock you. 1943. August. The Orel direction. The heat is so intense, the air shimmers above the parapets, distorting the horizon. Dust on their teeth, dust in the folds of their tunics, dust in the bolt mechanisms. It is everywhere. But the most terrifying dryness isn't in their throats, but in the supply reports. Captain of Engineering Andrei Ivanov looks at the map spread out on a shell crate. The map is worn at the folds, marked with thick pencil arrows. Red arrows are ours, blue are the Germans. The blue ones are thicker. They loom, pressing with their mass even on paper. Ivanov runs his palm over the sheet, as if trying to erase the impending inevitability. His hands, calloused and ingrained with dirt, seem like useless tools right now. The situation is an engineering dead end. Absolute zero. It is stifling in the dugout. It smells of damp clay, coarse tobacco, and sour sweat. Colonel Stepanov sits opposite. He doesn't look him in the eye. He looks at the same map, but he doesn't see terrain. He sees a death sentence. Between them lies the ammunition inventory. The numbers in it aren't arithmetic. They are statistics of future deaths. There are no anti-tank mines, none at all. The train was bombed somewhere near Tula, or the quartermaster made a mistake in the invoice. The reason doesn't matter. The consequence is singular. Before a Wehrmacht Panzer division, fully equipped with heavy machinery, lies a mile of emptiness. Zero, Ivanov says hollowly. It isn't a complaint. It is a statement of fact, like a pressure gauge reading. Comrade Colonel, our mine density is 0 mines per mile of front. Artillery? 2 battalions in the breakthrough sector. Shell starvation. 3 rounds per barrel. This isn't a defense, it's a shooting gallery. Stepanov is silent. He slowly rolls a cigarette. His fingers are yellow from tobacco, trembling with a fine, barely noticeable tremor. He knows. There will be no order to retreat. There is only one order. Stand. In the military hierarchy, this verb often means die while buying time. I have nothing to give you, Andrei, the colonel finally says. His voice creaks like an ungreased hinge. No warehouses, no reinforcements. The tanks will be here in 48 hours, maybe sooner. Intelligence reports a concentration of motors in Sector 12. The noise of engines warming up can be heard 3 miles away. Ivanov shifts his gaze to the terrain map. The Orel field. A cursed place for defense. An ideally flat table. No ravines, no rivers, no swampy lowlands. A dream for the German Panzerwaffe. Hard loam, dried by the August sun to the consistency of concrete. The ground holds a load perfectly. The ground pressure of a German Tiger tracks is 1 5/100ths of a kilogram per square centimeter. On this field, it won't sink even a millimeter. It will move as if on an autobahn, reaching maximum speed, firing accurately on the move. The sapper mentally overlays the movement trajectories. The tank wedge will go here, through the center, ignoring the flanks. They don't need to be clever. They have armor, optics, and the physics of hard ground on their side. We have infantry with Mosin rifles and a few 45mm guns that bounce off the frontal armor of German heavyweights like peas off a wall. Engineering obstacles? Ivanov asks, knowing the answer. Wire. Stepanov exhales smoke. 2 coils of barbed wire. And shovels. Shovels against 60 tons of alloy steel? You have men, Captain. 36 men in the sapper platoon. And an order. In this equation, the variables don't add up. To stop a tank battalion, you need a ditch 16 feet wide and 10 feet deep. Over a distance of a mile, that is thousands of cubic meters of earthwork. There are no excavators. By hand, with the strength of 1 platoon, such a volume cannot be moved in 2 days. Human physiology has limits. The output norm on Category 3 soil is 3 cubic meters per shift, if you tear your veins out. Here, that is not enough. Ivanov stands up. The dugout is low. He has to stoop. It presses down. Everything presses down. The ceiling, the responsibility, the silence outside. So hold on with your teeth, Stepanov summarizes harshly, looking away. Bite into the earth. Do what you want. Dig, gnaw, cast spells. But the tanks must not pass this line. Behind us are the army headquarters and hospitals. If they break through here, the front will collapse like a house of cards. The captain steps out into the air. Night covers the positions with a thick blanket. The stars are bright, indifferent. Somewhere far away, to the west, the sky is lit by flashes. Aviation is working there. But here, in the breakthrough sector, it is quiet. This silence is deceptive. It is the silence before the hammer strikes the anvil. Ivanov walks along the trench. The soldiers are sleeping, leaning against the trench walls. Someone is cleaning a rifle in the dark, clicking the bolt by touch. They don't yet know they have been sentenced. They hope for minefields that don't exist. They believe artillery will cover them with its gods of war. But the engineer knows the truth. The truth is that the only resource he has left in unlimited quantities is the black soil and clay under his feet. He drops to one knee, takes a handful of earth. Dry, crumbly on top, but dense, baked harder deeper down. Physics. War is always physics. Mass multiplied by acceleration, strength of materials, yield strength. The German war machine is a triumph of mechanics. To stop it, one must oppose it with a different mechanics. But which one? An anti-tank ditch, no time. Escarps, useless on the plains. Dragon's teeth, no concrete. Forest, too far. He has nothing but earth and shovels, and 36 pairs of hands. Ivanov looks at the field, flat as a parade ground, stretching into the darkness. Miles of flat surface. For a tactician, this is a death zone. For an engineer, it is a plane of applied forces. If you can't build a wall up, you have to go down. But a tank will overcome or bypass standard pits. Something else is needed. Something that changes the very essence of the interaction between track and soil. His brain feverishly sorts through options, discarding them one by one as untenable. Calculations click in his head like abacus beads. Time is leaking away. Every minute of delay brings the clatter of tracks closer. He feels like an architect ordered to build a skyscraper out of sand and fog. The task is unsolvable. According to all fortification textbooks, there should be a deeply echeloned defense here. Instead, there is only bare steppe and a captain with an empty holster and a head full of formulas. He returns to the dugout, where a kerosene lamp burns dimly. The light picks out the profile of a sentry from the darkness. The face is young, almost childlike, but the eyes are old. The eyes of a man who has seen too much in his 19 years. Ivanov understands. If he doesn't come up with a solution, these eyes will be covered with earth in 2 days. And not just these. A deficit of death. A strange phrase. Usually in war, death is in surplus. But now he lacks the tools for its production. He needs to create death for machines to save life for men. This simple, cruel logic hits his temples harder than his pulse. He pulls out the map again. Contour lines, isobaths, soils. Here it is loam, and there, by the old bed of the dried-up creek, there are deposits. Sand. Lots of sand. Useless, loose material, unsuitable for construction. Geological construction waste. The captain's gaze freezes on the symbol for a sand quarry in the rear, just over a mile from the front line. Sand. A granular body. Angle of repose, 30 degrees.
Bearing capacity, minimal. If you step on it, your foot sinks. But what if 30 tons drive over it? Something distant, pre-war, floats up in his memory. A construction site, the sound of water, a concrete pile disappearing into the void, a surveyor's error, a disaster for which he was almost court-martialed. Back then, it was a tragedy. Now. Ivanov slowly lifts his head from the map. A cold, calculating light ignites in his eyes. Not the excitement of a gambler, but the concentration of a surgeon. He doesn't see the whole picture yet, but he feels the direction of the force vector. The solution is somewhere nearby, in the properties of matter itself, in what everyone considers a weakness, looseness, instability, lack of support. The enemy counts on solid ground. The enemy relies on the axiom that the earth will hold. But what if we change the axiom? What if we force physics to betray them? The captain straightens up.
The fatigue hasn't gone anywhere, but now it has a purpose. He walks out of the dugout, inhaling the dusty air deeply. Somewhere out there, over the horizon, German mechanics are pouring fuel into tanks. They are preparing the machines for the march. They are confident of victory because their calculations are correct, for standard conditions. But the engineer sets the conditions, and tomorrow, the conditions will change. "Runner!" Ivanov's voice sounds dry, like the crack of a breaking branch. "Wake the squad commanders. Urgent assembly at my position, and get Sergeant Petrov with soil samples. Move!" Night ceases to be a time for sleep. Night becomes a workspace, a space for a blueprint that will be drawn with shovels. The kerosene lamp in the dugout smokes, burning up the remaining oxygen. The wick is long overdue for a trim, but Captain Ivanov doesn't notice the fumes. He looks at his hands. On his fingertips is gray dust. He rubs it, feeling every grain. Hard. Faceted. Eternal. There is no sleep outside. There, in the trenches, men catch the last hours before the horizon turns into fire. But the engineer has no right to sleep. His brain, deprived of rest, falls into a strange state where the past and present are compressed into one dense layer of time. The walls of the dugout dissolve. The smell of cheap tobacco is replaced by the smell of wet concrete and river mud. 1939. Construction of a railway bridge across the Desna. Ivanov is not yet a captain, but a senior foreman. The heat is the same as now, near Orel. The crash of the pile driver rhythmically hits the ears. Bang. Another bang. A reinforced concrete pile, calculated for a century of load, slowly, inch by inch, goes into the ground. Suddenly the rhythm changes. Instead of the dull, elastic sound of hitting solid ground,
A strange, squelching sound is heard. The pile, which was supposed to hit refusal, resting on bedrock, suddenly falls through. It goes down easily, as if into a void. 16 feet of concrete disappear in seconds. Workers scream, running back from the edge of the pit. Winches scream, cables snap, whipping the air like steel lashes. Quicksand. Ivanov remembers that animal terror, not of an enemy, but of geology. Sand saturated with water under pressure behaved like a liquid. The soil lost its bearing capacity. Hard became soft. Reliable became deadly. Back then, it was a disaster. Commissions, threats of a tribunal, frantic attempts to stabilize the foundation by pumping tons of cement into the bottomless throat of the river. An engineering failure. Ivanov blinks. The vision disappears. Before him is the map of the Orel salient and the steppe, dry as gunpowder. There is no water here, no quicksand. There is only loam and that sand quarry in the rear. But the principle remains unchanged. He grabs a pencil. The lead breaks from the pressure, but Ivanov continues to draw with the stump. Coulomb's law for granular materials. Shear resistance equals cohesion plus the product of normal stress and the tangent of the angle of internal friction. The formula is simple from a sophomore textbook, but right now, hidden within it is the death of an entire tank company. What holds a tank on the surface? The packing density of soil particles. When a track presses on the earth, the particles compress, interlock with each other, forming a rigid core under the tread. The earth resists. The tank moves. But what if we remove the cohesion? Ivanov closes his eyes, modeling the situation in his mind. He needs to create quicksand without water. Dry quicksand. If you take sand, ordinary, quartz, medium fraction, in its natural state, it is compacted. Its density is 1.5 tons per cubic meter. It holds a man, holds a truck. But if you loosen it, if you disrupt the grain packing structure, if you shovel it over, saturate it with air, don't tamp it down, but just pour it into a hole, the density will drop. The cohesion between particles will disappear. The angle of internal friction will decrease. Such a mass will not be able to hold a dynamic load. The captain begins to speak to himself. In a whisper. The words are abrupt, harsh. Specific pressure of a tiger is over 1 kilogram. Pressure of a man is 300 grams. A man will pass. A tank won't. This is physics. This isn't magic. Loose sand in the confined volume of a pit. The track rolls on. It presses. The grains don't interlock. They start to flow, moving out from under the tread to the sides and up. The tank loses support. The harder it gasses, the faster the tracks spin, scooping out the unstable mass from under itself. It digs its own grave with its own power. Ivanov feverishly calculates on the margins of a newspaper. Depth of the pit. If made 3 feet, the tank will sit on its belly but might crawl out. Not enough. 6 feet? Better. 10 feet. Ideal. With a German tank hull length of 20 to 23 feet, the pit must be such that it noses in and hangs. The center of gravity shifts forward. The machine falls at a 40-degree angle. The engine is in the back, heavy. It will pull the stern up, driving the nose into the sand. The gun will bury itself in the ground. Firing sector, 0. Mobility, 0. The combat unit turns into a piece of useless metal. But the main thing is camouflage. On top, there must be a pie. A layer of branches? No, they'll sag. Planks? No time and no material. Sod. just a layer of sod 4 to 6 inches thick. The root system of the grass forms a reinforcing mesh. It will support the weight of a man. A sapper will walk over it without leaving a trace. The sod will spring back, but when 30, 40, 50 tons of steel roll onto this carpet, the mesh of roots will snap instantly, and beneath it, the abyss will open. Ivanov looks at his drawing. It looks like madness. To suggest, to command, to dig dozens of huge pits, fill them back up with sand, and expect this to stop an elite Wehrmacht division? It's nonsense, he says aloud in a skeptic's voice. The sand will settle. If it rains, it will compact. It won't rain, he answers himself in an engineer's voice. The barometer is dead still. Dryness is our ally. And if they go to the left? They won't. We'll leave them this corridor. We'll mine the flanks with the pathetic scraps we have. We'll pretend the center is weak. We'll invite them to an execution. Doubts gnaw at him. Responsibility presses on his shoulders heavier than a concrete slab. It's one thing to risk yourself. It's another to force 36 men to shovel hundreds of cubic meters of earth for an idea that exists only in his head. If you made a mistake in the looseness coefficient calculations, the tanks will simply drive over these pits, swaying slightly, and then the battalion will be crushed by tracks. The blood will be on him, on Ivanov. Not on the Germans, but on him. He remembers the bridge again. That moment the pile fell through. The feeling of utter helplessness before the laws of nature. Now he must flip the board. He must become the one who controls the failure. He is not a killer. He is a builder. But right now, his construction site is a trap. His material is unstable equilibrium. The door to the dugout creaks. An orderly enters, bringing a mess tin of cold porridge. "Comrade Captain, Sergeant Petrov is there with the samples, as ordered." Ivanov starts, returning to reality. His eyes, inflamed from insomnia, light up with a cold shine. "Send him in. And a lantern. There's not enough light." A minute later, 3 piles of soil lie on the table before Ivanov. Black soil. Clay. And yellow, coarse-grained river sand. The captain takes a pinch of sand. He lifts his hand and slowly unclenches his fingers. The sand trickles in a thin stream, forming a perfect cone on the table. "See, Petrov?" Ivanov asks, not looking at the sergeant. "Sand, comrade captain. Useless. Mortar made with this would be weak." "This isn't for mortar." Ivanov sharply knocks the top off the cone with his palm. The pile collapses, flowing across the table. "This is water. We will make them drown in dry earth." The final picture forms in his head. These aren't just holes. This is an engineering structure of the negative type. Instead of building fortifications up, we are building them down. We use gravity and flowability as a weapon of mass destruction. No mysticism, pure soil mechanics. The angle of repose for dry sand is 32 degrees. Anything steeper will collapse. The pit walls must be vertical. When the tank crashes down, the sand from the walls will flow down, jamming the road wheels. The abrasive will get into the transmission. That is the end of the machine. "Gather the men," Ivanov commands. His voice no longer creaks. It rings with metal. "Shovels, pickaxes, stretchers, everything we have. We're going to the quarry, and then to the front line." "Comrade Captain, the men have been on their feet for 2 days," Petrov begins. "They can sleep in the next world, or after victory. Execute." Ivanov rolls up the map. He doesn't need it now. Now he has a blueprint in his head that is more important than any topography. A plan born from a mistake of the past to fix a mistake of the present. He walks out into the night. The air is fresh, pre-dawn. Somewhere out there, behind the front line, German tankers are sleeping, confident in the reliability of the solid Russian earth. They are mistaken. The earth is a traitor, if you know how to negotiate with it. The technical assignment is born not in the quiet of offices, but under the rumble of distant cannonade. Ivanov unrolls a sheet of wrapping paper on the table. The backside is rough, gray, like the face of a deadly tired man. The pencil draws hard, straight lines. There is no place for art here. This is the engineering anatomy of a future catastrophe. The operation plan is simple as a crowbar strike and complex as clockwork. Object: heavy breakthrough tank. Mass: 30 to 57 tons. Track contact length: about 11.5 feet. Width: 20 inches. Task: deprive the object of support. Not to damage, not to stop, but specifically to make it fall through. To make horizontal motion instantly transition into vertical falling. Ivanov draws the profile of the trap. It is a rectangular pit. Dimensions: 23 feet long, 13 feet wide. Depth is a critical parameter. 13 feet. Why 13? The height of a German tank is about 10 feet. If it goes down, the turret must end up below ground level, or, in the worst case, at the level of the parapet, so the gun barrel buries itself in the cut of the pit. A tank in a pit is not a combat unit. It is a steel coffin with a living crew that cannot open the hatches because they are blocked by collapsed soil or are under point-blank fire from our infantry. Filling, Ivanov mutters, hatching the inside of the drawn rectangle. Agent of chaos. The secret isn't in emptiness. An empty pit is visible. The secret is in the filling. The pit must be filled with sand, but not just filled. The sand must be sifted, aerated, extremely loose. The physics of the process works against intuition here. Usually, builders compact soil with tampers, soak it with water to achieve a monolith. Here, the task is the opposite. We need to create a medium with minimal density, a medium that behaves almost like a liquid. Every grain of sand is a small, solid sphere. When they lie tightly, they rest on each other, creating a rigid frame. Static friction holds the load. But if there is air between the grains, if the structure is disturbed, friction disappears. Under a dynamic impact, and a 30-ton machine hitting at 25 miles per hour is exactly an impact, such a mass doesn't absorb energy. It parts. Ivanov writes a formula in the margin. Specific soil cohesion tends to 0. Angle of internal friction is unstable. Now the most important thing. The lid. The eye of the German driver-mechanic sees a field. A flat field overgrown with wormwood and sun-bleached grass. He sees solid ground. He trusts his eyes. Ivanov draws a thin line over the hatched pit. Camouflage. A layer of black soil and sod. Thickness, 8, maximum 12 inches. This is an engineering risk on the verge of a foul. A thin crust of earth must withstand the weight of a man, but break under the weight of a machine. Calculating loads here is a dance on a razor's edge. The pressure of a soldier's boot sole is roughly 4 to 6 pounds per square inch. The root system of steppe grass is natural rebar. Tangled roots create a membrane that holds the distributed load of a light weight. A sapper will walk across, checking the camouflage. The sod will spring, but not tear. The membrane will work. But when the first road wheel of a tank rolls onto this membrane, the pressure will jump exponentially. But it's not even about pressure. It's about vibration and shear force. The track doesn't just press, it pulls the earth toward itself, gripping with its grousers. The sod won't withstand the tension. The roots will snap with a dry crack that no one will hear over the roar of the motor. And as soon as the crust tears, the track will be in the void. More precisely, in loose sand, incapable of providing a reaction force. The tank will nosedive.
The center of gravity, shifted forward in most machines, will play a cruel joke. The inertia of the multi-ton hull will finish the job. The machine will dive. This isn't getting stuck in mud where you can put a log under it and drive out. This is an instant fall into the abyss. A medieval wolf pit recalculated for 20th century power. The brilliant simplicity of death. Ivanov puts down the pencil. His hands are trembling slightly. On paper it looks perfect, the mathematical inevitability of failure. But paper doesn't convey the main thing, the volume of work. To create one such trap, 112 cubic meters of dense, packed loam must be removed. 112 cubes, by hand, with shovels. And then the same volume must be filled back in, but with sand brought from the quarry. And this must be done not for one pit. The front of a mile needs to be covered. We need at least 15 traps arranged in a checkerboard pattern.
The captain calculates quickly in his head. 1,680 cubic meters of excavation, plus the same amount of filling. Total, over 3,000 cubic meters of soil must be moved in 48 hours. He has 36 men. The output norm is 3 cubes per shift for a fresh soldier. Now the soldiers are exhausted. Arithmetic says, impossible. Physiology screams, you will die. But war does not recognize impossibilities. Ivanov looks at the drawing like a sentence. 15 pits, he whispers. 15 graves for tigers. Or one mass grave for us if we don't make it in time. The logistics of this hell are more frightening than the battle itself. Sand has to be carried, not enough stretchers. So, ponchos, sacks, tunics. The soil removed from the pits cannot be left nearby. Fresh clay unmasks a position instantly. Any bump on a flat field will arouse suspicion. German observers are professionals. They will notice a change in terrain. That means every kilogram of removed earth must be carried to the rear, to the ravines, and hidden. Carried hundreds of yards away, in the dark, without noise. This isn't construction. It is a convict ballet. Every movement must be precise. Dig, put on the poncho, carry away. Return, dig, and so thousands of times. The captain rolls up the drawing. The paper crunches. This sound seems to him like the crunch of breaking bones. He understands that now he will go to the men and order them to achieve the impossible. He won't speak of patriotism. He won't speak of duty. He will show them this drawing and explain the physics. Sappers are pragmatic people. They believe not in slogans but in calculations. If they understand that the pit will work, they will dig it with their fingernails. Colonel Stepanov will approve, Ivanov says into the emptiness of the dugout. He has no choice, and we have no time. He takes an old, worn handbook, Field Fortification, from the shelf, opens it at random, reads, "Soil is a medium of resistance." No, he harshly corrects the book. Soil is a weapon. The plan is ready. The trap blueprint is a symphony of destruction, written in the language of engineering graphics. Now these lines must be turned into reality. Turn graphite on paper into bloody calluses on palms. The mind has done its job. Now it's the muscles' turn. The heavy, dirty work of the mind is over. The hellish work of the shovel begins. Colonel Stepanov looks at the drawing for a long time. He smokes one cigarette after another, and the smoke hangs in a thick layer in the low dugout. In the corner, a clock ticks away time that doesn't exist. He is an engineer. He understands the mechanics, but the commander's intuition resists. Bury the labor of an entire platoon in the ground when every rifle counts. "These are graves, Andrei," he finally says, not taking his eyes off the paper. "You're suggesting we dig our own mass grave in advance." "These are traps, Comrade Colonel. A tank has no intellect. It has mass. I propose using its mass against itself." Stepanov looks up. In his eyes is a red grid of burst vessels and a heavy, leaden fatigue. "You have 6 days. If intelligence is wrong and they come earlier, there will be no one to execute you. We'll all lie here. Proceed." 36 men. These aren't heroes from posters. These are men in dirty tunics, salty with sweat, with black soil ingrained in their skin. They have different faces, but identical hands, broad, hard as oak roots. A sapper platoon. People whose war is not a bayonet charge, but the monotonous movement of soil from point A to point B. Ivanov leads them into the field when the sun has already set. Darkness here is not a friend, but a strict condition of the task. Any sound in the night steppe carries for miles. The clang of a shovel on a stone is heard by a German listener as clearly as a shot. "Listen to the order." Ivanov's voice is barely audible, on the verge of a whisper. "We work without sound. Do not drive the shovel into the ground. Cut in softly, with pressure. Do not throw soil on the parapet. Unload onto ponchos. Talking is forbidden. Smoking is forbidden. Cough into your sleeve." Hell begins. 6 nights that will merge into one endless black ribbon. Phase 1. Opening. The sod is removed in slabs, roots carefully undercut, like surgeons removing skin. These squares of grass are the most valuable resource. They are laid in the shade, watered with the remaining water from canteens so the grass doesn't wither. If the sod dries out and turns yellow, the camouflage is blown. A German pilot observer will see yellow spots on a green background immediately. Under the sod is loam, hard, baked by the heat. The shovel doesn't go in. They have to use pickaxes. But you can't strike. The sound of the blow is deadly. The soldiers wrap the pickaxe heads in rags. The blow is dull, cottony. Thud, thud, thud. This rhythm eats into the subcortex. Phase 2. Excavation. The anatomy of earthworks is cruel. A cubic meter of dry loam weighs 3,500 pounds, 1.5 tons. 112 cubes must be removed from each pit. 36 men turn into a living conveyor belt. 2 in the pit loosen. 2 load earth onto ponchos. 4 carry. A poncho loaded with earth weighs about 180 pounds. It is dragged or carried in arms, bending under the weight. It must be carried far. To the ravine, 300 yards from the positions. Dumped there, masked with branches. Second night. Muscles don't ache. They burn with fire. Lactic acid clogs the fibers. Every movement causes a spasm. But stopping is scarier than dying. If you stop, you start thinking. Thinking about how this is impossible. Ivanov works alongside everyone. He doesn't stand over them. He stands in the pit. His tunic is soaked through. His cap has long been lying somewhere at the bottom of the excavation. He feels the handle of the sapper shovel becoming an extension of his arm. The wood is slippery with blood. Calluses burst, skin comes off, exposing raw flesh. The soldiers wrap their palms in rags, foot wraps, pieces of shirts. No one complains. In this silence, a complaint would sound too loud. Only the heavy, hoarse breathing of 36 throats is heard. Air whistles into lungs and tears back out with a wheeze. "Pull, Mitya, pull," someone whispers in the dark. "Don't jerk, smoothly." Heavy bastard. A responding whisper like a groan. Third night. The depth of the pits reaches 6 feet. Now the earth has to be thrown upwards. This changes the biomechanics of the movement. Body leverage works at the limit. Backs give out.
The characteristic crunch in lower backs and stifled cries are heard. Men fall from exhaustion right into the sand, lie for a minute gasping for air, and stand up again. This isn't heroism. This is work. Heavy, dirty, necessary work. Like at a factory, only the shift lasts until dawn, and the output quota is paid for with life. The logistics of the process become more complicated. Now they must not only carry out clay, but also bring in sand. The quarry is over a mile away. The return trip is with a load of sand. The same weight. The same 1.5 tons per cubic meter, only loose, awkward cargo. Sand seeps through cracks in the ponchos, packs into boots, grits on teeth. The men resemble ants, an endless chain of shadows moving between the quarry and the front line. Clay there, sand back. Exchange of matter, trading hardness for instability. Fourth night. Crisis. Sergeant Petrov approaches Ivanov. The sergeant's face is gray, eyes sunken. "Comrade Captain, men are dropping." Private Sidorenko lost consciousness. Heart. Ivanov wipes his forehead with a dirty sleeve. He knows the men are at their limit. He himself is holding on only on anger and caffeine. "Splash with water. Give 10 minutes to lie down. Then back in line." "They won't get up, Andrei Petrovich." "They will get up." Ivanov says this not as an order, but as a fact of physics. "If they don't get up now, they never will. The Germans will wake them up with tracks. Get them up." He walks over to the lying soldiers. They sleep the sleep of the dead, right on piles of earth. "Up!" Ivanov's whisper cuts the silence like a razor. 3 pits left. 3 pits separate us from a tribunal and death. Up! They get up. Staggering like drunks, they take their shovels. Human will is a strange resource. When it seems the tank is empty, there is always an emergency reserve found there. Fifth night. The pits are ready. Now, filling. Sand flies into the excavations. The rustling of billions of grain sounds like rain, but there is no rain. The sky is clear, starry, indifferent to the suffering below. The sand cannot be tamped. It must be poured loosely, layer by layer, allowing air to remain between the grains. "Don't stomp!" Ivanov hisses. "Walk on the edges. Don't touch the middle." The sappers work with jeweler-like precision. They are creating a structure of death. On top of the sand, a thin layer of black soil. And the final touch, sod. Those very squares of grass preserved from the first night. They are laid joint to joint, watered, seams masked with dust. Sixth night. Finale. Final touches. Remove traces. Sweep up spilled clay. Scatter excess earth in the ravine. By 4 in the morning, the work is finished. The field in front of the positions looks pristinely clean. Flat steppe, feather grass swaying in the wind. No hills, no trenches. An ideal landscape. Only Ivanov knows that beneath this idol, 15 voids are hidden. 15 mathematical traps. The soldiers collapse. They sleep right in the trenches, black with dirt, with bloody hands. They did the impossible. They moved 3,000 cubic meters of earth in 6 nights, using only muscle power and simple levers.
Ivanov looks at his hands. They tremble with such coarse tremors that he can't roll a cigarette. Tobacco spills past the paper. He smells the odor, the smell of damp, overturned earth, the smell of sweat, the smell of iron. It is the smell of war. He feels no pride, only emptiness. The body's resource is exhausted to the bottom. That's it, he exhales. Now it's up to physics. Dawn rises over the Orel field. The sun paints the horizon a blood-red color. Silence rings in the ears. Somewhere out there, over the horizon, Tiger engines are warming up. German tankers drink coffee, laugh, anticipating an easy stroll. They don't know yet that 36 Russian men with shovels have already changed the landscape of their destiny. The trap is set. The spring is compressed. Captain Ivanov closes his eyes. He needs to sleep at least an hour before the earth starts to shake. The silence hits the ears harder than artillery cannonade. When guns roar, you are busy surviving. When there is silence, you are left alone with your thoughts. And thoughts right now are more dangerous than shrapnel. Intelligence returned an hour ago. The reconnaissance platoon lieutenant, dirty, with shaking hands, put a report on the table. The paper trembled. "They're here, Comrade Captain. Grid 1480, accumulating in the ravine. Visually confirmed, 25 heavy machines. Others are approaching. Clatter of tracks and warming engines heard." "Attack will be at dawn, that's for sure." Ivanov looks at his watch. 4 in the morning. Less than 60 minutes to dawn. Time has compressed. 6 days of hard labor turned into an instant, and now every second stretches into eternity. All work is done. Shovels are cleaned and stacked. Men are in the trenches. But the captain can't find peace. Fear gnaws at him. Not the animal fear of death. On the front, you get used to that quickly, like the smell of foot wraps. This is the fear of an engineer. Fear of a calculation error. He pulls out a notebook. The graphite slides over the worn paper, checking the formulas again and again. Coefficient of internal friction of sand, 0.6. Angle of repose, 30 degrees. Axle load, 15 tons. On paper, everything adds up. The tank must fall through. Physics is relentless. But a treacherous thought pounds in his head. What if? What if the sand settled in 6 nights? What if the morning dew that fell at dawn created capillary bridges between the grains? Water is glue. The surface tension of liquid in soil pores creates menisci that pull particles together. Cohesion arises. If the sand gets wet, it will acquire the properties of a solid body. Remember wet sand on a beach? You can run on it. It holds weight. If the moisture of the sand in the pits exceeds 5%, the trap won't work. The tank will sink 20 inches, roar, belch clouds of smoke, and climb out. And then all 3,000 cubic meters of shoveled earth will simply become a monument to stupidity. Ivanov exits the dugout. The air is humid. Fog creeps along the lowlands. This is bad. This is very bad. Fog is water. He walks along the trench, peering into the faces of the soldiers. They aren't sleeping. They sit hugging their knees, smoking into their fists, staring at a single point. They did their job. They dug these pits, taking his word for it. Now their lives depend on whether their commander was right with his formulas. At the end of the trench sits an elderly soldier, Private Orlov. Before the war, a physics teacher in a rural school. Now, a digger with calluses looking like the bark of an old tree. He wipes his glasses with a piece of rag, squinting at the brightening east. Ivanov sits down next to him. Between them isn't regulations, but a shared secret. The secret of what is hidden under the field. Humidity, Orlov, Ivanov says without preamble. Thick fog. The teacher puts on his glasses. The lenses are thick, one with a crack. Surface condensation, Andrei Petrovich. Orlov's voice is calm, creaky like chalk on a blackboard. Depth of moisture diffusion into compacted soil in 3 hours, no more than a centimeter. The sod acts as a vapor barrier. Inside, the sand is dry. And if I was wrong about the friction angle, if the dynamic impact compacts the mass before it starts to flow. Orlov turns his head. There is no fear in his eyes. In them is the fatalism of a scientist conducting an experiment at the cost of his own life. Coulomb's law has no exceptions, Comrade Captain. A granular body under a load exceeding the bearing capacity behaves like a fluid. This is an axiom. We cannot cancel gravity. Neither can the Germans. On paper, it's all smooth, Ivanov snaps angrily. But paper doesn't weigh 60 tons. Physics is not faith, the teacher answers harshly, and steel notes cut through his voice. Physics is the dictatorship of nature. We created the conditions for a catastrophe. Mass will do the rest. A tank is inertia. The faster they go, the deeper they'll bury themselves. Kinetic energy will transfer into work on soil deformation. They are finished. Ivanov looks at his hands. They are shaking. And if they don't go through the center? They will. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. They are pragmatists. They see a flat field. Why would they drive around? This dialogue in the pre-dawn trench looks like a confession. 2 techies trying to talk down fear with textbook terms. They cling to logic because there is nothing else to cling to. God is not here. Here there is only soil mechanics and strength of materials. If the materials fail, they will be crushed. Ivanov stands up. Thank you, teacher. Don't mention it, engineer. Our grade will be posted in an hour, in red ink. The tension in the trenches becomes almost tangible. It hangs in the air like a dense suspension. Men check grenades, tighten belts, adjust helmets. Every sound now seems like a roar. The click of a safety, the clink of a mess tin, the rustle of boots. The nervous system is at the limit. The fatigue accumulated over 6 nights recedes. Adrenaline, the fuel of war, is dumped into the blood. Ivanov returns to the command post. Stepanov is already there. He stands at the trench periscope, gripping the handles so hard his knuckles are white. It started, the colonel throws out shortly. Ivanov presses against the embrasure. The horizon comes alive. At first, it is just a dark strip separating sky from earth. Then this strip begins to move. A growing rumble is heard. A low, vibrating sound that makes the ground underfoot and the glass in the binoculars tremble. This isn't the sound of an engine. It is the sound of an approaching avalanche. Silhouettes swim out of the morning haze. Square, angular, alien. Tigers. They come in a wedge, classic formation for a breakthrough. In front, heavy machines. Behind them, medium ones. On the flanks, APCs with infantry. They walk confidently, brazenly. Hatches open. Commanders stick out of turrets, surveying the terrain. They see emptiness before them. No wire entanglements, no dragon's teeth, no signs of minefields. Did the Russians run? Or do they simply have nothing? Ivanov looks through binoculars at the lead tank. On the side is a white number, 312. The gun barrel with a muzzle brake points straight at the dugout. Distance, 1 mile. Closing speed, 18 miles per hour. In 3 minutes,
They will be at the trap line. The captain's heart beats against his ribs like a hammer on an anvil. One thought spins in his head. Just don't turn. Just don't stop. It is a strange prayer for an atheist, a prayer to the force vector and center of gravity. Now, in these last minutes, Ivanov's doubts reach their peak. He thinks he sees the earth sagging under the tracks, but holding. He thinks the sod has turned to steel, that physics has betrayed him. "Artillery, hold fire!" Stepanov yells into the phone receiver. "Hold fire until my command! Let them come closer! Let them enter!" The silence on the Russian positions is frightening. The Germans apparently sense a trick too. The lead tank slows down for a second. Ivanov holds his breath. If they send reconnaissance or sappers ahead now, it's over. The traps will be discovered. The platoon will be shot from a distance. But the tank tears forward again. Exhaust pipes spit black smoke. The commander in the hatch waves his hand. "Vorwärts!" Forward. They believed the illusion. They believed in the firmness of the soil. Psychology worked. German pedantry played a cruel joke on them. If the map says it's steppe here, and eyes see steppe, then it is steppe. They cannot imagine the landscape was rewritten by hand in 6 nights. The distance shrinks. 1,100 yards. 800. 500. The ground shakes. Dust rises like a wall. Ivanov sees the lead tiger rolling onto the first camouflage patch. "Come on," the captain whispers with just his lips. "Come on, damn gravity, work!" In this moment, there is no patriotism, no hatred. There is only cold calculation and endless waiting for the result of the experiment. An experiment where the lab table is a battlefield, and the reagents are human lives and tank steel. The second hand makes its last revolution, the moment of truth. The moment when theory must collide with practice and either shatter to pieces or break the enemy's spine. Watch, engineer. Watch your formulas take flash. August 19th, 4:30 in the morning. Dawn rises slowly over the Kursk bulge, as if reluctantly. The sun pushes through the low haze, painting the steppe in dirty pink tones. From the point of view of an outside observer, the landscape is idyllic. A flat field covered with burnt grass and wormwood. A light wind drives ripples across the tops of the feather grass. No scars, no upturned earth, no parapets. An ideal picture of the world, an ideal lie. Captain Ivanov stands at the edge of the third trap. He knows it is here only by a barely noticeable landmark, a broken burdock stem he left yesterday as a marker. For any other person, be it a German gunner or a Russian infantryman, the ground here is no different from the ground 10 yards to the left. The same color, the same texture. Ivanov takes a step forward. His boot lands on the sod. This is the moment of truth for the camouflage. Under the sole of the tarpaulin boot is 8 inches of woven roots and earth. Beneath them is 13 feet of loose, unstable void filled with sand. The captain shifts his body weight onto the leg. 176 pounds of live weight press on a square inch of surface. The sod springs, softly, elastically, like a good gym mat. But it holds. The engineering calculation is correct. The root system of steppe grasses works like a reinforcing mesh. It distributes the load, transferring it to the edges of the pit. As long as the pressure does not exceed the critical threshold, the lid works. Ivanov takes another step, and another. He walks right through the center of the death trap.
His heart skips a beat. His mind knows the structure will support a man. Instinct screams that he is hanging over a precipice, but the earth does not open up. The illusion of solidity is absolute. "It holds," Ivanov whispers. "It holds, damn it." He squats, runs his palm over the grass. It is damp with dew. Dew is good. It wets the dust, hides micro cracks at the joints of the sod squares. Moisture makes the grass brighter, more natural. Nature plays on the sapper's side without knowing it. 15 such spots are scattered across the field in a checkerboard pattern. 15 hidden zones of instability. This is a minefield where instead of explosives, there is gravity. Ivanov returns to the trench. Here, in the narrow slit dug to full profile, a heavy, stifling spirit reigns. The smell of unwashed bodies, damp clay, gun oil, and old fear. 36 men are asleep. They lie in a heap, pressed against each other to keep warm. Their faces are black from ingrained dirt that no water can wash off. Hands, swollen, beaten, bloody, twitch in sleep. These people gave everything they had. They drained their physical resource to the bottom. Right now, they look like dead men forgotten to be buried. Sergeant Petrov sleeps sitting up, leaning his back against the trench wall. His mouth is slightly open. A quiet whistle is heard from a punctured lung, an old wound making itself known. A rifle is clamped between his knees. Even in sleep, he doesn't let go of his weapon. Ivanov looks at them with a kind of painful tenderness. He has nothing to tell them. No words of gratitude will compensate for 6 nights of hard labor. Their reward is the chance to survive today. A chance they dug for themselves. The morning silence is deceptive. It is not a peaceful silence. It is a vacuum before an explosion. Sound appears on the edge of perception. At first, it is not even sound, but vibration. It transmits through the soles of boots, rises up the spine. Tremors of the earth. A low, womb-like rumble grows in the west. This is how a high-voltage transformer hums under overload. But there is no electricity here. Here, there are diesels. Multi-cylinder Maybach engines. Hundreds of pistons compressing fuel mixture. Hundreds of crankshafts turning drive wheels. The rumble becomes dense, tangible. It fills all space, displacing the singing of early birds and the rustle of grass. This is the voice of war. Monotonous, emotionless, inevitable. Ivanov looks at the horizon. Where the sky meets the earth, a gray veil rises. Dust. A Wehrmacht tank division is on the march. They come without hiding. They have nothing to fear. Intelligence reported the path is clear. German commanders are confident in their invulnerability. At their disposal are the best machines in Europe. Thick armor, powerful guns, Zeiss optics. They are used to the Russian steppe being just a space for maneuver. They don't know the space has been changed. Ivanov feels a string tighten inside him. It isn't fear. Fear was at night when they might not have made it in time. Now, cold anticipation. Like an engineer at a test range before starting a turbine. Calculations are done. Blueprints are archived. The structure is assembled. All that remains is to press the Start button. This button will be pressed by the first German tank to cross the invisible line. Movement begins in the trench. Soldiers wake up one by one. No commands, no shouting. The instinct of danger works better than an alarm clock. They lift their heads, listening to the rumble. "They're coming," Petrov says hoarsely, rubbing his eyes with a dirty fist. A lot of them coming. 2 battalions, no less, Ivanov answers without turning around. Full strength. No one panics. Panic is the lot of those who don't know what to do. Here, everyone knows their maneuver. Infantry grips rifles. Anti-tank rifle crews take positions on the flanks. Their task is not to hit tanks in the forehead. That's useless. Their task is to cut off the infantry and hit the vision slits when the machines stop. If they stop. Ivanov glances at the field again. It looks treacherously peaceful.
A green sea of grass hiding a trap beneath. The visual deception is perfect. The eye catches on nothing. A flat plain. A sacrificial table. This is the horror of engineering warfare. The enemy sees one thing, but reality is completely different. The firmness of the soil is an illusion. Safety is an illusion. The only reality right now is the formulas of soil mechanics buried in the ground, along with the sweat and blood of 36 men.
"Comrade Captain,"
a young signalman whispers, pressing the receiver to his ear.
"One is on the line, asking for readiness status."
Relay. Object handed over, waiting for the customer. Ivanov takes out a tobacco pouch. His fingers are surprisingly steady. He rolls a cigarette, lights it with a trophy lighter. The smoke of the cheap tobacco is acrid, bitter. It clears the brain. Ahead, a mile of emptiness. Behind, Moscow. And underfoot, physics. And now this physics will come into its own. The horizon ceases to be a line. It becomes mass. A dark, clanging wall moves east, devouring space meter by meter. This is not a chaotic attack. This is geometry in metal. The classic German Panzerkeil, armored wedge. At the base of the wedge, heavy machines. Tigers move with an interval of 50 yards. Their wide tracks grind the steppe wormwood, pressing it into the dry loam. Behind them, in the second echelon, medium Panzer fees trail, covering the flanks. Infantry doesn't run, bending under bullets. Infantry rides on the armor of Hanomags, legs dangling casually. It is a march of victors. The commander of the lead Tiger, a Wehrmacht Oberleutnant, stands in the open turret hatch. He doesn't hide behind vision blocks. He needs a view. Wind hits his face, carrying the smell of dust and heated iron. He brings binoculars to his eyes. Before him is a perfect plain. Russian sappers didn't manage anything. No ditches, no escarps. Even the barbed wire hangs in pathetic shreds. Intelligence reported accurately. Minenfly. No mines. The Russians simply ran out of resources. The Oberleutnant smiles. He feels the power of his machine. 57 tons of alloy steel. The 700 horsepower Maybach engine hums evenly, bass-heavy, without strain. The suspension with overlapping road wheels absorbs bumps. The tank floats across the field like a battleship on calm water. The 88mm gun sways slightly, seeking a target. For him, this field is not an obstacle. It is a shooting range. In the Soviet trench, silence becomes ringing. Colonel Stepanov doesn't take the binoculars from his eyes. His fingers gripping the optics housing have turned blue. "Walking like it's a parade," he wheezes. "Bastards. Hatches open. Smoking cigarettes." Ivanov stands nearby. He doesn't look through binoculars. He looks at a stopwatch and landmarks on the field. "Distance 1,200 meters, the engineer comments dryly. Speed, 18 kilometers per hour. Uniform linear motion. "Why isn't artillery firing?" Stepanov breaks into a shout, but immediately cuts himself off, remembering his own order. "Nerves. Nerves are shot to hell, Andrei." Artillery is silent because it's too early to shoot.
.45s from this distance will only scratch the paint on the frontal armor. We need to let them in close. We need to lure them into the death zone. The ground underfoot starts to vibrate. This isn't just a tremor, it's a rhythmic, seismic shock. Hundreds of tons of metal hit the ground, and the shock wave travels faster than sound. Dust on the parapet begins to crumble in thin streams. Ivanov closes his eyes for a second, picturing the cross-section. The vector of the German wedge's movement is directed strictly perpendicular to the defense line. They don't maneuver. Why maneuver if you are invulnerable? They are sure physics is on their side. Solid ground holds the load.
Ground pressure is normal. Overconfidence is also an engineering factor. It is the lubricant that makes them drive faster toward their own destruction. 1,000 meters, Ivanov counts off. The roar of engines becomes deafening. Now the clatter is audible too, the characteristic screeching sound of metal on metal as tracks roll over idlers. In the trenches, soldiers press into the earth. The instinct of self-preservation screams, "Run!" Reason commands, "Lie down." Private Orlov adjusts his glasses. They have fogged up. He wipes them with a shaking hand, but continues to watch the approaching mountain of steel. As a physicist, he understands the inevitability of inertia. Mass multiplied by velocity cannot be stopped. It can only be redirected. Down. The lead tank turns slightly to the right. Ivanov holds his breath. If it goes right another 2 degrees, it will pass between the second and third traps. The strip of solid earth between pits is only 13 feet. This is a safety bridge. If the driver mechanic accidentally chooses this path, the whole scheme collapses. The tank will slip through, others will follow, orienting on the leader's track. "Don't you dare," Ivanov whispers. "Don't you dare touch the levers. Straight! Go straight!" The Oberleutnant in the Tiger's hatch says something into his throat mic. The tank straightens out. It goes strictly along the vector Ivanov drew on the map 3 nights ago again. German pedantry. Ordnung. Order. The formation cannot be broken. This discipline will be their undoing. 800 meters! Now the faces of the tankers are visible through binoculars. Young, tanned, calm. They are masters of life. They crossed half of Europe on these tracks. France, Poland, Ukraine. Everywhere the earth obediently lay under the tracks. Why should it be different here? They see a flat field before them, overgrown with sparse bushes. Their maps claim the soil here is dense. Geology is an exact science. It doesn't change in a week. They don't account for one thing. A Russian sapper is capable of changing geology faster than a German staff officer can stamp a map. Stepanov lowers his binoculars. "Andrei, if they don't fall through, if the sand holds, I will personally shoot you, and then myself." "Fair enough," Ivanov nods. "But they will fall through. The law of universal gravitation knows no ranks or awards." 600 meters. Tanks start firing on the move. Short stops, shot, movement. Shells tear the earth in front of the trenches. Fountains of black earth fly into the sky. Shrapnel whistles overhead, biting into the logs of the overhead cover. The Germans are probing the defense. They want to provoke return fire, to pinpoint firing positions. But the Russian trenches are silent. This silence is scarier than return fire. It is unnatural. It presses on the enemy's psyche. Why aren't they shooting? Why aren't they running? Thinks the German gunner, looking into the sight. 400 meters. This is already pistol range for a tank gun. They see every bump. They see our eyes. The lead number 312 is heading straight for the third trap. Ivanov sees that very burdock bush serving as a beacon. 50 yards to the edge of the pit,
40. 30. Time slows down to frame-by-frame mode. Ivanov sees the front road wheel of the tank, a massive steel disc with a rubber tire, crush the grass beneath it. The track, consisting of dozens of heavy links, bites into the soil. Grousers tear the surface, providing traction. Engine thrust is transferred to the ground. The tank pushes the earth back to move forward. The earth resists. So far. "Come on," Stepanov whispers. His voice breaks into a squeal. "Come on!" 10 yards to the edge of the hidden excavation. The Tiger's driver mechanic gives it more gas. He wants to slip through the danger zone faster, to burst onto the infantry positions and start ironing the trenches. The roar of the engine intensifies, throwing a stream of black soot into the sky. Dynamic load increases. Vibration reaches a peak. The tracks roll onto the camouflage layer of sod. A thin crust of earth, held by roots, takes the weight of 57 tons. For a split second, it seems nothing is happening. The tank continues to move. The hull goes smoothly. Ivanov feels everything inside him drop. Did Orlov make a mistake? Did the sand settle? But physics cannot be cheated. The tensile strength limit of the sod is exceeded. The root mesh snaps. This sound drowns in the roar of the motor, but the result is visible instantly. The illusion of solidity vanishes. There is no support under the tracks anymore. There is an abyss filled with granular chaos. The steel march is finished. The fall begins. It doesn't happen like in the movies. There is no slow motion, no solemn music. There is only the crude, ugly physics of destruction. Lead tank number 312, the symbol of German technical power, suddenly loses the horizon. It looks as if a giant, invisible hand yanked it down by the front tow hooks. A moment ago, the 57-ton machine was a formidable weapon. Now, it is a falling body. The mechanics of the catastrophe are simple and ruthless. The front road wheels, having overcome the resistance of the sod, enter the loose sand like a knife into water. Grains of sand, deprived of cohesion, instantly part to the sides. There is no support. The Tiger's center of gravity, shifted forward due to heavy frontal armor and transmission, plays the role of an anchor. The inertia of movement pushes the hull forward, and gravity pulls the nose down. The velocity vector breaks. The tank noses over. The impact on the bottom of the pit is terrifying. The crash is so loud, it is heard even through the roar of engines. The multi-ton steel carcass slams into the sand from a height of 10 feet. The suspension doesn't work. It is designed for compression, not falling. Torsion bars snap with a screech resembling gunshots. The stern of the tank flies up. The engine roars idly. The tracks have lost contact with the ground and are now helplessly churning air, throwing up fountains of sand and dust. Inside the machine is hell. The crew was not strapped in. Tankers fly forward, smashing into the gun breech, observation instruments, control levers. The driver is likely dead or unconscious. His chest met the steering wheel. The radio operator is smashed against the machine gun. The commander, who a second ago stood proudly in the hatch, is thrown out by inertia. He falls onto the armor, rolls down right under the clanking track, which continues to rotate by inertia, grinding sand mixed with a uniform. A cloud of dust billows up, obscuring the view. The following tank, number 314, is 50 yards away.
Standard distance. But human reaction has a delay. The driver mechanic of the second Tiger sees the leader disappear into a cloud of dust. He doesn't understand what happened. Explosion? Mine? The instinct of self-preservation works faster than reason.
The driver yanks the left lever back, locking the track. He tries to leave the danger zone, to perform an evasion maneuver. This is a mistake. Sharp braking with one track at 18 miles per hour causes a skid. The heavy stern skids sideways. The tank turns broadside, loses control, and sliding on the dry grass, flies straight into the neighboring trap. The checkerboard arrangement of pits calculated by Ivanov works flawlessly. To avoid one pit means falling into another. The second tank falls sideways. This is even worse. It flips over. The crash of metal on metal drowns out all sounds of the battlefield. The turret tears off the ring. The ammo rack inside spills. Shells roll on the floor, threatening detonation. The crew turns into mince inside a steel can being shaken by giants. The formation breaks instantly. Domino effect in action. The third tank manages to brake. It stops 10 yards from the edge of the drop. Tracks lock. The machine stops dead. But stopping in battle is death. The formation is broken. Inertia of the attack is lost. The psychology of victors is replaced by panic. Chaos on the German frequencies. Achtung, Minen! Attention, mines! Mines! Someone screams. Nein, der Boden bricht ein! No, the ground is collapsing! Another wails. They don't understand the nature of the threat. They are afraid to move. Behind them, medium tanks push forward, not seeing what is happening at the head of the column. A pileup forms, a metal traffic jam in the middle of the steppe. An ideal target. Ivanov in the trench exhales. Air whistles out of his lungs, as if he himself had just held that tank on his shoulders. Fire! Stepanov screams. Fire on the bastards! Rapid fire! Now the artillery joins in. This is no longer a duel. It is an execution. 2 battalions open fire. Distance, 400 yards. Impossible to miss. The 45s, which were useless against the frontal armor of an advancing Tiger, now tear apart the sides of stopped and turned machines. Shells drum on the armor like hail on a tin roof. One shell hits the side of the third tank, frozen at the edge of the pit. Flash. A cumulative jet burns through steel, hits the ammo rack. The explosion is terrifying. The 8-ton turret flies into the air, somersaults and falls back, crushing the hull. A pillar of fire rises 30 feet. The tanks fallen into the pits are the most helpless. They aren't burning, but they are dead as combat units. Their gun barrels are buried in the pit walls. They can't raise the guns. They can't turn the turrets. Firing sector, 0 degrees. These are no longer tanks. They are bunkers buried in the ground against the will of their garrisons. Sand pours from above, clogging vision slits, ventilation grills. Engines stall from overheating and dust. German infantry riding on the armor jump to the ground in panic. But the ground here is also under fire. Maxim machine guns from the flanks begin their work. Long bursts mow down gray figures darting between burning and overturned machines. Ivanov's engineering calculation included this factor too. The traps forced the tanks to bunch up, creating a cork. Artillery pounds this pile without choosing targets. Every shell finds metal. Ivanov looks at the field through the embrasure. He doesn't see heroism. He sees the result of formulas working. That Panzer 4 over there tries to back up but runs over the edge of the pit where the Tiger has already fallen. The soil gives way. The tank lists, slides down, crushing its big brother with its weight. The screech of metal causes a toothache. 2 steel monsters grapple in the pit like spiders in a jar, destroying each other with weight and mass. 4th one down. 5th, Stepanov counts. The colonel's voice trembles with wicked excitement. Look, Andrei! Look how they burn! Without a single mine! But Ivanov isn't laughing. He sees a detail others miss. From the hatch of one of the fallen tanks, a tanker tries to get out. He is covered in oil and blood. He claws up the slope of the pit, slippery with sand, grabbing at the roots of that very sod that betrayed them. The sand flows, dragging him down. Man against granular body. Sisyphean labor. He crawls up, but physics pulls him down into the shadow of the burning machine. A high-explosive shell lands nearby. The blast wave throws the man back to the bottom. He doesn't appear again. This isn't just a victory. This is the triumph of precise calculation over brute force. The German machine, built on principles of superiority and pressure, was destroyed by a lack of resistance. They pushed, expecting to meet solidity, but met emptiness. The principle of judo on the scale of a tank division: use the opponent's strength and inertia to destroy him. Smoke covers the field. Black, greasy smoke from burning diesel and rubber. In this smoke, shadows dart, explosions flash. The attack has choked. The German wedge, that ideal geometric formation, has turned into a scrap metal graveyard. The rear ranks of Germans start to turn around. They realize, ahead is not a passage. Ahead is an anomaly. A Bermuda Triangle in the Kursk steppes. They retreat, snapping back with fire, leaving their comrades in sandy graves. Ivanov drops his head into his hands, ringing in his ears. Adrenaline leaves, leaving behind emptiness and nausea. He looks at his palms. They are still gray from dust. From the very dust that just stopped an elite division. Earth isn't just dirt.
Earth is a material. If you know how to work with it, it becomes stronger than armor. The captain takes out a canteen, takes a sip of warm, stale water. It tastes better to him than the most expensive wine. It worked, he says quietly to himself. It worked. The battlefield cools slowly after the fight, like an overheated engine. The rumble has died down, replaced by the crackle of burning metal and rare single shots finishing off the silence. The wind lazily carries black, oily smoke to the west, where the surviving Wehrmacht machines retreated. Captain Ivanov climbs out of the trench. His legs buzz as if filled with lead, but it is a pleasant heaviness. It is the heaviness of a living man. He walks across the field, which an hour ago was a death zone. Now it is an equipment graveyard. The landscape has changed irreversibly. The flat table of the steppe is covered with black pockmarks of craters and steel monuments to German failure. He approaches the nearest trap. This is pit number 3. In it, sticking its stern to the sky at a 45-degree angle, sticks a PZ-6 Tiger. The picture resembles a surreal installation. The menacing machine, created for domination, looks pitiful and ridiculous, like a beetle flipped on its back. The barrel of the 88mm gun has gone deep into the sand, up to the muzzle brake. Ivanov jumps to the edge of the pit. Soil crumbles under his boots. He sees what he wanted to see most: the tracks. The space between the links is packed with sand. It compressed, turning into an abrasive wedge. The drive wheel tried to spin even after the fall, stripping the teeth of the ring gear. The metal is bluish from overheating. The friction here was monstrous. The turret hatch is open. A German tanker sits on the armor. His face is black from soot. The whites of his eyes shine with unnatural whiteness. He doesn't reach for a pistol. He sits hugging his head with his hands and rocks from side to side. Shock. Concussion. The German raises his eyes to Ivanov. There is no hatred in his gaze.
In it is total incomprehension. He looks at the Russian captain, then shifts his gaze to the pit, to the spilled sand.
Minen?
The German wheezes, pointing a finger at the soil.
Wo sind die Minen?
Where are the mines? Ivanov is silent. He has nothing to explain to the enemy. The German seeks an excuse for his defeat in technology. Mines, explosives, secret weapons. He cannot accept the fact that his tank, the pinnacle of Reich engineering thought, was stopped by a simple pit with sand and a school law of physics.
Kein Minen,
Ivanov says quietly.
Nur Physik.
No mines, just physics. The morning's total is dry and concrete, like an accounting report. 9 tanks, 9 heavy and medium machines remained in the traps. 3 more were burned by artillery while attempting to turn. Total, 12 armored units destroyed or captured on a mile-long front sector. Soviet losses, 4 wounded by shrapnel during shelling. No killed. The efficiency coefficient tends to infinity. Costs: 0 explosives, 0 shells at the stopping stage. 3,000 cubic meters of shoveled earth. Result: disruption of the offensive in a strategically important direction. Colonel Stepanov approaches Ivanov. His cap is knocked to the back of his head, tunic unbuttoned. He looks drunk, though he hasn't drunk a drop. This is the intoxication of a survivor. An adrenaline backlash covers him with a wave of nervous laughter. He slaps Ivanov on the shoulder so hard he almost falls into the pit with the German.
Well, you really did it, engineer.
Stepanov laughs, and this laugh sounds like a cough.
I didn't believe it. Honestly, Andrei, I didn't believe it. Thought we'd bury the platoon here for nothing. But look at them. Like bowling pins.
The colonel takes out a cigarette case, hands shaking so much, cigarettes spill onto the ground.
9 of them.
Do you understand? A whole company in the sand, without a single shot. Army HQ called. The general is shouting into the phone, doesn't believe it. Says, "What kind of wonder weapon do you have there?" And I tell him, "A shovel, Comrade General. BSL 110, big sapper shovel, model 1940. Ivanov picks up a fallen cigarette, straightens it. "Not a miracle, Comrade Colonel. Calculation." "To hell with calculation." Stepanov waves his hand, sweeping the field with a broad gesture. "Look at them. They're crawling out and surrendering. They think we're wizards here." The crews of the disabled machines are indeed climbing out. Under the barrels of infantry rifles, they line up in a column. Their arrogance has been knocked off along with their tracks. They walk, stumbling, looking back at their machines sticking out of the ground like tombstones. For them, the war is over. Ended not with a heroic death in a firestorm, but with a humiliating fall into a hole. Psychologically, they are broken more than physically. Their faith in technical superiority is destroyed. Ivanov walks on. He needs to inspect every pit. It is a professional habit, defect analysis. Here, on the 5th trap, the edge crumbled a bit ahead of time. The tank didn't dive, but slid. If the mechanic were more experienced, he could have tried to reverse and possibly broken out, albeit losing a track. But panic did its job. The crew abandoned the machine. And here, on the 7th, the work is perfect. The tank went vertical. The turret is jammed by soil. Even the hatches can't be opened. They are pressed by earth. Dull thuds are heard from inside. The crew is walled up, alive in their own tank. They have enough air for a couple of hours. Ivanov feels no pity. This is the enemy. The enemy came to kill. But he feels respect for the trap mechanism. It worked harder than he expected. Sergeant Petrov approaches him.
He is limping, but smiling, with a gap-toothed mouth.
In his hands is a German submachine gun. A trophy.
Comrade Captain,
Petrov hands Ivanov a flask.
spirit, found in the Fritz tank. We should toast our work.
Ivanov takes the flask, takes a sip. The liquid burns his throat, washing away the taste of dust and burning. How are the hands, Petrov?
Can't feel my hands, Comrade Captain. Like they're someone else's. But that's nothing. Main thing is, we're alive.
The sergeant looks at the field.
And to think we got them. With shovels. Just shovels.
A shovel is a lever, Ivanov says.
Archimedes said, "Give me a place to stand, and I will move the earth." We did the opposite. We removed the place to stand, and they tipped over themselves.
This is the triumph. Not in the medals that will probably be given, not in the stars on shoulder straps, but in the realization that intellect is stronger than steel. That 36 exhausted men with a 7th grade education managed to outplay the Henschel Design Bureau and Guderian strategy. War isn't always who outshoots whom. Sometimes it is who outthinks whom. The sun rises higher, flooding the steppe with merciless light. Now everything is visible in the palm of your hand. The orderliness of the German offensive turned into chaos. Medics carry wounded Germans. Our soldiers smoke, sitting on the armor of enemy tanks. Someone is already attaching a cable to try to pull one of the PZ-4s out with a tractor. The machine is intact. It will be useful. Ivanov looks at his boots. They are in sand. In that very sand that saved their lives. He thinks about how in a week, maybe, new tanks will come. Or aviation. Or infantry. The war isn't over. But this specific battle, this specific task, they solved. Solved not by numbers, not by blood, but by skill.
Andrei Petrovich!
Orlov calls out to him. The teacher sits on the parapet, wiping his eternal glasses. From a pedagogical point of view, that was an excellent lesson.
Lesson in what?
Ivanov asks, coming closer.
Lesson in applied physics for the master race. Lesson topic: influence of soil density on conquerors' ambitions. Grade F.
Ivanov smiles for the first time in days. The smile comes out crooked. Dry lips crack.
They won't come for a retake, he says.
He takes out his notebook. Need to write a report. Describe material consumption, trap layout, results. He writes, in the course of defensive battles on the line, an engineering barrier system of the wolf pit type with sand filling was applied. Dry, bureaucratic lines. Behind them, neither calluses nor sleepless nights, nor that chilling fear when the tank drove onto the sod, are visible. Paper will endure everything. Paper won't convey the trembling of the earth. But Ivanov knows. He will remember this sound for the rest of his life.
The sound when a multi-ton behemoth loses support and crashes into the void. It is the sound of reason's victory. The victory of a man with a shovel over a machine of death. The captain closes the notebook, hides the pencil. The work is done. Need to prepare for the next one. There is a lot of land in Russia, and enough shovels for everyone. War ends not with fireworks. War ends with a change of technical assignment. For Sapper Ivanov, May of 45 means not rest, but a return to the strength of materials of creation. Andrei Ivanov takes off his shoulder straps, but doesn't take off responsibility. He returns to the bridge building trust. His hands, which taught the earth to kill, teach it to hold again.
He designs railway spans, piers, supports. Now his enemy is not tank steel, but time, corrosion, and metal fatigue. In his blueprints, there are no more traps. There are safety margins and reliability coefficients.
But sometimes, looking at fresh concrete going into a foundation pit, he remembers that dry August. He remembers that firmness is a relative concept, that any support can be knocked out if you know the point of application of force. Ivanov grows old, becomes a chief engineer, then a pensioner. He rarely speaks of the war. For him, that episode is not a feat, but a successful engineering solution under resource deficit conditions. Private Orlov returns to school. A blackboard, chalk, 30 pairs of children's eyes. He writes the formula for friction force on the black surface. F equals mu times N. The chalk crumbles. White dust settles on the cuffs of his jacket. For the students, this is a dry abstraction, a boring duty before an exam. For physics teacher Orlov, behind these symbols stands the smell of burning diesel and the gnashing of metal. He tells them about Newton's laws, but he doesn't tell how these laws broke the backs of tigers. He is silent about the fact that physics can be scarier than a machine gun. Knowledge becomes peaceful. It loses its deadly grin, turning into textbook paragraphs. The sand trap method gets into classified engineering manuals. It is studied in academies for a couple of years. Cadets draw diagrams, pass tests. But progress is relentless. War changes. Cumulative shells, reactive armor, nuclear weapons, electronics appear. The sapper shovel gives way to backhoes and remote mining layers. Captain Ivanov's tactics become an archaism, a historical curiosity. It is forgotten, like flintlock muskets are forgotten. Too simple, too dirty, too much manual labor. In the era of missile strikes, no one will dig pits by hand. 2003, August. The same field near Orel. 60 years of silence. Along a country road, kicking up the same gray dust, drives an old Volga. The car stops on the shoulder. The door opens heavily with a creak. A very old man gets out. It is Orlov. He is over 90. He leans on a cane. His movements are slow, economical. The jacket hangs on withered shoulders. Glasses with thick lenses are still on his nose. He walks into the field. Grass waist high. St. John's wort, clover, wormwood. The air hums with insects. The heat is the same as back then. The old man looks for landmarks. He looks for scars. But there are no scars. The earth is a self-repairing system. Over 60 years, rains, winds, and plant roots did their job. The pits that weren't filled in back then healed themselves. The edges collapsed. Wind erosion smoothed the corners. Sod covered the wounds again with a thick green carpet. Entropy defeated structure. Orlov stops where, according to his calculations, the third trap was. The one where the tiger reared up. Now there is just a small, barely noticeable depression here, overgrown with thistles. Geological micro-relief. No metal. The tanks were pulled out by trophy teams back in '43. They were taken for smelting. Steel that went to kill became rebar for new houses, rails, or plows. The cycle of matter is complete. Not even a nut remains of the German division. Not even a mound remains of the sappers' hard labor. The field is perfectly flat. It has forgotten about the war. It feeds. Soon a combine harvester will pass here, gathering the wheat harvest. The old man stands, leaning on his cane. He closes his eyes. In his memory, the field is different. Black, pitted, smoking.
He hears phantom sounds, cursing, the clatter of bolts, the crunch of sand. But when he opens his eyes, around him is only peace and the chirping of grasshoppers. This is nature's highest justice. It erases traces of human madness with absolute indifference. The earth doesn't care what is buried in it, bones, iron, or ambitions. It will digest everything. Orlov bends down, bending his back with difficulty. He plucks a stem of wormwood, rubs it in his fingers. Bitter smell.
"That's it, Andrei Petrovich," he says into the void. Ivanov has been gone for 10 years. Stepanov, 20. No one is left from that platoon. The memory of this operation lives only in this old man's head and in a couple of dusty folders in the Ministry of Defense archives that no one will ever open. Was it a victory? Undoubtedly. Did anything material remain of it? Nothing. But there is an invisible remainder. In this field, dissolved in this grass, is a principle. Engineering thought is immortal. As long as there are those capable of seeing the essence of things, not their shell. Ivanov wasn't a hero in the ancient sense. He was a technocrat. He showed that intellect is a weapon that requires no gunpowder. A tank is brute force. A pit with sand is a thought. Thought defeated force. This equation has no statute of limitations. Orlov turns and slowly wanders back to the car. He doesn't cry. Veterans don't cry over landscapes. He simply records a fact. The field has healed.
Life defeated death by method of absorption. But if tanks come here again tomorrow, a new Ivanov will be found. A new blueprint will be found. And physics will fall in line again, like a loyal soldier, ready to execute any order of one who knows its laws. The car drives away, leaving a trail of dust. Dust settles on the grass. The sun stands at the zenith. Absolute, ringing silence. Only somewhere deep, under the layer of black soil, in the dense darkness of the loam, grains of sand still lie pressed against each other. They remember the weight of steel, and they are ready to part again, if required.